Hi, everybody who's here already.
Good afternoon, Lindsay.
Good afternoon. I recognize we really got the prime spot of the day at 3:45 in the afternoon on a Friday. Everyone wants to talk about the budget at this time of the day. I hope we can get some more people here.
Hello,
Hey, Rui.
how are you?
Good, good. Just so everyone knows, this appears to already be recording. I guess it just, well, here, I can pause it. Hit record again. Look at how cute she is. Wow. She's so big. Sorry, I'm talking about Cheryl's little daughter there. She's so cute.
She's adorable.
She is. She's so big. Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name's Lindsay Moss. I'm the Vice President of Business Services. If you weren't aware, our controller, James Zavas, he actually left us back in December. So we are short a controller right now. So you're stuck with me, which is, subpar. James was great. And we have wonderful help from Cesar Perfecto. If you've never met Cesar, he's our assistant controller. So he's going to help do the presentation today. And he really can give you guys some good refreshers and reminders on how to get what you need from the accounting department. So big thank you to him for helping me put this together and being here to help with the discussion. Let me see. I'm gonna pick on you guys a little bit if you don't mind. I know most of you don't have your camera on, but I'm curious. Can any of you, I don't know, you might have to actually turn on your camera and wave at me. How many of you that I don't know at all, which there's a bunch of folks in here I don't know, how many of you are actually the budget owners for your budget for your department? How many of you have ever had any input in the budget work? No? So most of you that I don't know are like faculty. Yes. Yeah, I recognize your names at least.
Can you define owner? What do you mean?
Well, you would be one, Vandana, someone who has an org, a department, and you've got a budget that you're responsible for.
Got it.
Working with fiscal and giving us the budget file back and making sure that it's loaded and ready to go. Okay. And then I know there's a handful of staff here who may or may not have been involved with that process with their manager. So good. So we have a mix because I'm prepared to talk to both ends of the spectrum, folks who are used to doing budget work and folks who aren't, and how you can get more involved. So, okay, great. Just wanted to see a little bit of who our audience was. So again, jump in as I go through this and as Cesar goes through this. This is such a small group of people. No problem with stopping us along the way. I don't want you to get lost. And I'm trying to, oh gosh, I got to share my screen. I'm trying to do all the technological stuff. So just shout out. I can't see all of you to see if you raise your hand technologically. Just jump in if you want to say something. No problem. Okay, now you guys can you see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, good, because for some reason the yellow line that tells me you can is not there. So, okay, we're going to start with a quick high-level recap of this year's budget. I'm not going to go into all the gory details of all of our presentations, so hopefully this is more digestible. So this slide is just a reminder of where we landed for our 2021 adopted budget. This is back from September, so this is like old news here. We don't really talk about these numbers much at all because we're all looking forward at our fiscal projections. But what I want everyone to focus on here is our 2021 adopted budget. Take a look at our total revenue, 91 million, total expenses, 96 million. Add in our other kinds of transfers, and you can see our total expenses were way more than our total revenue. So every time you hear that we do not have a balanced budget, we have a deficit, that's the difference. We need, you know, you need to bring in the same amount of money that you're spending or more money than you're spending. And we're in the opposite case here. So we have a $4.9 million deficit per our 2021 adopted budget, which was approved by the board back in September. So again, old news, there's some changes to this, but this is our starting point for all of us to be on the same page of where we were at in the beginning of this fiscal year.
Liz, are you able to show this in presentation mode just so we
I think if
get
I,
a bigger slide?
is it easier for you guys? Okay, let me try. I'm just a little worried that then I can't see anything on my end. Oh, good, it's working. Yeah, does that work for you guys? Okay, good, because
Thank you.
when I did it earlier, it like took over my whole screen. Oh, you're right. I forgot to do one of my jobs. You guys are right. Let me show you. Give me a second. I forgot to tell you all. Everybody has to sign in to this form. I'm going to put it in the chat right here. Click on that link. Everyone's supposed to sign in to this form here and just inform our in-service friends that you're all here.
This will allow you to get credit for taking this class.
Yes, lots of credit. We'll
Participating in this
send you,
workshop.
yeah, we'll send you, you know, thousands of dollars because you attended it. I'm just kidding. Okay, thanks for that reminder. Back to this presentation here. Okay. Okay, this next slide, I tried to take an extremely complicated fiscal projection spreadsheet, which is in board docs in the board of trustees, CPC. If you're looking for it, go ahead and take a look there. But I tried to just distill it down to some basics here. So our latest 5-year projections we did, which was in December, so not too long ago, we did a few scenarios. The scenario I'm going to show you, or that's here on the screen, was our 8% decline in credit resident FTS for next year, just based on that assumption that we think we're going to continue to decline next year. We don't know, we don't have a crystal ball, I wish we did, but based on that assumption, we have projections going multiple years out. The first projection is the projection for this year. So I just showed you that our deficit was over $4 million. Our latest projection has a deficit of 3.7 million. That's from December. If you all listen to Dr. Goswami today in service, he said an even lower deficit in the 2 million range. And that's because he's taking into account new HERF money. Oh, Sandy can draw on my screen. That's cool. He was taking into account additional money we just received from HERF. I can explain that later, but our deficit does go down even further. I was just tying back to the December board items and CPC items here. So you can tie back to the reports if you want to look. But things are looking better and better for us this year with the one-time money we received. Okay, then if we keep going, our projections for year 21-22, still a large deficit, 22 to 23, still a deficit, 23-24, still a deficit, and we're not getting to a balanced budget until way out in 24-25. So what this is showing us is a repeat of what we've been seeing year after year, that we really have an ongoing structural deficit in our unrestricted general fund. COVID is complicating the issue greatly, but don't get confused. COVID hasn't created our structural deficit. It's been with us for many years. We've been slowly using our reserves to offset the lack of funding we're receiving every year. And the board is very focused on us dipping into our reserves year over year and how that impacts the district. So for these fiscal projections, Dr. Goswami has been talking about needing to reduce the budget to be able to get into this balanced state, which, as you see here, we're showing that we do in 24-25. And that's based on us doing what he's calling budget stabilization actions, which he detailed. I'm just pulling this from a CPC meeting also. So you can find this in CPC. These are the budget stabilization action items he has outlined for these 2 upcoming years, year 2021 and the following year, 22-23. These are ongoing permanent adjustments that he's wanting to see us incorporate into the budget to the tune of these two dollar amounts, 1.8 million, and then an additional 1.7 for a total of 3.5 million in ongoing permanent reductions in our budget to get us to a balanced state after these years have passed. These are big categories, big buckets. Dr. Swami is not set on us hitting these numbers and these categories to the T. More could come from one or from another or from something different. He's very flexible in terms of just coming up with ways to reach these in the grand total scheme, that 1.8 next year and 1.7. So bear with us as we work through how we're going to incorporate these into the budget. But the plan for right now is that this 1.8 reduction is worked into our budget for next year over the coming months. Okay. This is just a refresher slide because everybody always needs to take a look at our fund balances when we talk about the budget. The blue bar here is our unrestricted general fund reserve. The red is our equipment fund, and then the green is the construction fund. The board has set a minimum fund balance for us of about 20% of our budget overall. Our budget is pretty easy to do the math. Our budget's about $100 million. So our reserves is usually around $20 million. And you can see that we're falling below the board minimum policy right there, that yellow line. And you can see how the reserves have come down over the last few years. If I have this slide handy for the projections, it falls down dramatically into the coming year. So I didn't want to go into the weeds with you all on that. But to give you an idea about how the reserves look, this is that information. So I'm sure most of you have heard about all the different federal COVID-19 relief funds that have been provided to the district and to many other government organizations and schools. Back last year, we received the HERF-1, which a lot of people are calling the CARES Act because it was a federal act called the CARES Act. And within the CARES Act, there was this Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. We received that money last year, $5.8 million. And there was a minimum requirement that 2.9 million of it be provided to students through emergency grants, and that left the remainder for the district to utilize before the end of this fiscal year. And we've been using a lot of those funds for various COVID needs specific to the instructional side, because that specific funding came with very strict requirements that the funds could be used to help any type of instructional programs make it through, this COVID time and provide courses for our students and provide technology for students. So the Chromebooks, the hotspots, all those wonderful things we've been able to provide to students were funded through that. Now the big new news is this HERF-2 money, which actually didn't come from the CARES Act. It came from a Coronavirus Relief Act. So it's kind of confusing, all of the different names, but you'll hear CARES Act and HERF and COVID all used kind of meaning the same thing. But back in the very end of December, the federal government signed into law this act, and then it was just recently, middle of January, the information was released as to how much we would be allocated from this HERF-2 act. And we haven't received the cash yet, but we have been allocated $11.8 million. So this is good news. Yay, we can use it. We need this money to help keep all of our remote operations working as efficiently as we can and help our students out. This money has the same minimum requirement for us to spend at least $2.9 million on emergency grants directly to students. However, we can spend more than that if we want on emergency grants to students. But at a minimum, we have to spend 2.9, and that leaves $8.9 million on the institutional side we can use. They haven't announced the exact deadline by which we need to spend that money, but we are estimating or assuming that we need to spend it by June 30 of next year. Now, the good news, besides this being a large chunk of cash for us, the good news is there's significantly looser spending restrictions on these funds, allowing us to use the institutional portion, not just on the instructional kind of needs, but we can also use it for student support activities, and we can also use it, they call it, to defray expenses associated with our lost revenues, such as in the food services fund, the parking fund, even in the child care center. And that's really critical for our budget to be able to use that money for this, because we were having to offset from the unrestricted general fund this year those large losses in revenues in those funds. So this is a big help to us. That's the money I was referring to earlier, where Dr. Goswami said that our deficit for this year is looking about $1 million better than our December projection, and that's thanks to this funding. So good news here. I'm going to take a pause. Any questions about the HERF money? I know it's a big new thing. We're working on strategically determining exactly how we're going to spend that money in CPC next week. Please join us in CPC. I expect there to be further discussion about how that money will be expended and our plans for that. And we're looking to have folks request that money through just a basic Google form or something of that nature. So we have all the requests in one place and we can look at them as a whole.
So Lindsay, this is Lori. Is there a form from the federal government that has to be filled out saying how that money was spent?
Yes, we always have to do reporting on how the money is spent. Absolutely.
And so since we're in play with program review, can some of that money be used for that, or how would we fund program review items?
So this money does have to be used specifically for things that assist us due to COVID. So it's like we can't supplant our normal requests, our normal expenses. An example of something we could use this money might be, we need to hire additional people to answer phones because we're having an onslaught of phone calls in a certain department because we're remote. Or we could use this money to implement a new software that allows us to work more effectively remote and or get, automated forms to students. And then of course, all the technology and PPE is covered by this. So there needs to be some correlation to COVID and why the funds we're spending or the project you're proposing is specific to how we can perform better during COVID or need to during COVID.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. I got to put you guys on mute for 1 second, but I think I'm gonna let Cesar go. No, he's not next. I'm sorry. I know it's a doctor. Hold on a second.
Just keeping it real, everyone. Just part of COVID. I'm in my daughter's room, by the way, so please don't make fun of my temporary office.
Can I laugh, Caesar?
Sorry about that.
This is Lisa.
Okay.
As I'm eating pizza, sorry. It's almost dinner time.
Okay, very good. Any other questions about the HERF money? I know there'll be a lot coming up with this, and we just received it. So yes, the money can buy Chromebooks, Larry, and it has been Chromebooks, hotspots. I think, boy, lots of different technology devices this is purchased. We've even purchased specialized equipment for students, like specialized MacBooks or all kinds of different technology devices for students and employees to be able to work remotely. So.
Lindsay, is this being used at all for the business analysis that's hopefully coming up and like potential reorging or restructuring departments? Is that possible with this money?
Yeah,
because it seems like it would be a COVID
definitely
related thing.
Yeah, that's on one of my lists that I make sure at least somebody or me officially requests. Business process analysis specific to COVID impacts on businesses. Yes, on processes, I should say. Yes, that can be covered with this. Definitely. Yep, you got the right idea. So think of ideas, any of you, of how this may benefit your programs or your departments, and stay tuned on how you'll be able to request the funds. Okie dokie. All right, so I kind of want to do a funny slide here, but it didn't end up looking too funny on the screen. I wanted to point out and kind of ground us all how confusing this is, right? So at one hand, I'm explaining to people, we have no money, we have to cut everything, and we have a structural deficit that's been going on for years, and we need to make all these different adjustments. And at the other time, we're saying, we have $11 million and lots of opportunities for spending money. So for anyone who's feeling confused, you're not confused. It's odd, it's complicated. So do spread the word with your colleagues when you hear somebody saying, oh, I heard we have a ton of money and we're out of the red with our structural deficit. Well, no, they're two completely different funds. The HERF money is restricted, one-time money specific to COVID. And it's wonderful. We need that. We're going to use every penny of it. But on the other hand, we still have our unrestricted general fund that's completely separate from that COVID money. And we still have to work to bring that fund into balance. So if you're feeling a little crazy here, you're not the only one. It's kind of hard to understand why all these different pockets of money don't solve one problem here while it solves another problem over there. So do share with your colleagues that it's a little odd of a dynamic to be explaining that in one hand we have plenty of money and please propose ideas, and on the other hand we're asking for budget cuts in various places. So
Lindsay, real quick, on this, if and when the Biden administration decides that they're going to give the states money, is that going to help us out at some point?
you know what, Lisa, I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't heard much about that. Cesar, have you? He's good at economics and all that.
Well, this is some of the money that Biden was already pushing it for. This got passed in December, but Biden was already working with the administration to try to push for this. So it just got pushed in before he came into office.
There's another one that's supposed to be coming for the states who have been really depressed and actually they've lost so much money that if they pass the $1.9 trillion relief package, that in there is money for states.
It's actually 2.9 trillion. And today they already started going through some adjustments that got approved.
Yeah.
And so they're going to probably be making a few more adjustments. And then eventually they're going to pass the budget reconciliation. On that one, they just need a simple majority. So there is some money coming to states, but right now there's still going to be a few more adjustments throughout the next 2 weeks. So we'll know more, probably about 2 to 3 weeks is when we're going to know how much it'll impact the state of California.
Yeah, and does that give us back some of our money, like prior apportionments that we didn't get in future?
I'll talk about that in a bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
Lisa, you've just kicked Cesar off into his section. So he's next. Good job. It's your turn. Take it away, Cesar. He's going to give us a recap on the latest news with the governor's January budget.
Yeah, so Lindsay shared all the exciting stuff. I'm going to tone it down a little now. No, just kidding. It's other stuff. So I'm just going to give everyone a recap, and then I'll get into what Lisa was asking about. So about a year ago, the governor presented his first budget proposal, which normally comes out in January. It's pretty much the draft proposal of the budget for fiscal year 20-21. It was great. There was a lot of money going to the schools, a lot of money for different programs. And then the pandemic hit, right? We went right into the apocalypse. And so that's what the picture is right there next to that. And suddenly by the time May came around, the budget for California looked a lot different. And it showed that we had a $54 billion deficit. Now, when the state shows a deficit, by law, it's required to balance the budget in that current year. It could show a deficit for future years, and that's just giving everybody a bit of a glimpse into the future on some of the cuts that they might have to make. But last year in May, they realized that because of the pandemic, they were going to have a $54 billion deficit. So they made lots of cuts to different programs. They made some cuts to community colleges as well. We weren't sure exactly how it was going to impact us. But between May and June, there are some additional adjustments where the California Assembly and the California Senate, they work with different groups that are lobbying for additional money or for different proposals, and then they come back with their own proposals to the governor. And so it turned out that they were expecting that money was going to come from the federal government. So they instead gave community colleges an IOU and said, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to continue to give you all the revenue that we normally would, but we're not going to give it to you in this year. We're going to give it to you in future years. And
Right.
so what that meant is that we were going to receive a huge deferral. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Now, the other thing that the state anticipated is that there was going to be a huge drop in student enrollment. And that's exactly what we've been experiencing this year. The state right now is experiencing anywhere from an 8 to 12% decline in student enrollment across higher education. So it's hit California pretty bad. And so a year went by, or I should say approximately 7 months. And so we were in January again last month. And so that's when the governor presents his new budget proposal for the upcoming fiscal year. So this would be fiscal year 21-22. And there was a lot of good news in the governor's recent proposal. Revenue came in higher than they thought. So they made all of these cuts because of the deficit. And it turns out that more money came in than they projected. And this really was due for three main things. One, there was an increase in the housing market.
Mhm.
So that was great. A lot of housing prices were going up. A lot of it is due just to limited demand, but more money came in from housing than they expected. Another piece that came in is a lot of people are purchasing stuff online. And so it kind of created a little bit of stimulus in the California economy. And so instead of a lot of people going to non-taxable services, like let's say salons or let's say to their dry cleaners, which are considered services, people use money for taxable services. So they were getting a lot of product online that's taxable. And so that brought in some additional revenue as well. And so, and then the third piece is just, oh my gosh, I just blanked out right now. There was a third piece and it'll come back to me. So what was proposed in the governor's budget was a 1.5% cost of living adjustment to the revenue. So what that means is that they were increasing the revenue that SBCC is going to be receiving by 1.5%. So we received approximately an $85 million apportionment funding. And so what that means is that if we increase that by about 1.5%, that's about a little more than $1 million that we're going to be getting in additional funds. That was unexpected.
Is that due to a windfall? That's what they were saying that we received. I heard from the governor's page that this last year they got something like, I don't know if it was $26 billion of windfall revenue to be dispersed into the already depressed budget.
I don't know which windfall you're referring to. It's like, it could be part of what I was mentioning, that more revenue came in than they initially projected.
Yeah.
Now the other piece is part of what Lindsay was talking about. We received the HERF fund. There was a huge package that was passed by Congress. And so the state was anticipating receiving this, but they weren't sure how much they were going to be receiving. So what that did is it reduced the IOU that we were going to get. We were going to get IOU of, or a community college was going to get an IOU about 1.6 billion. And so that means that it's revenue that we're guaranteed, but that we weren't going to get this year. And the problem that was creating for a lot of schools is, if you think about it, let's say if I told you, hey, I'm still going to pay you for the month of February, but I'm not going to pay you until December.
Right.
Everybody would freaking out because everyone would be thinking, well, that's great. I'm still going to get my money, but what am I going to do from now until December? I have to figure out a way to come up with money. And that's exactly what schools had to do. So schools were panicking, but it turns out that the deferral was reduced by over 75%. So that's probably some of the main bullet points from the governor's budget in terms of how it impacts community colleges in Santa Barbara City College. Now I'm going to move forward just because we only have 15 minutes left. And so now one of the things that I wanted to talk about is mid-year budget. So at this point, everyone should be reviewing their mid-year budgets if you're a budget manager. And so I'm speaking to budget manager specifically, but in Simpler, you can also look at the information for your org. So right now through January, if you're already at 70% of your budget, you should be a little concerned. So right now through January, normally we would be at around 50% of our budgets already, let's say 60%. But if you're already at 70%, that would be a flag. So right now we're looking at my org, the fiscal services department. And so I want to give everyone a glimpse. So the very first line item is non-instructional supplies. So we have a budget of $10,500 for the year. That's in the second column where you see the fiscal year adjusted budget. That's the budget that we're working with right now after adjustments have already been made. For the year, we've already used up about half of that, $53,669. And we also have another $2,000 in purchase orders. So that's money that has to be set aside because we know that we've already pretty much guaranteed it to other vendors. And so that leaves us a remaining balance of $3,000. So if you look at the last column, we've already used 70.9% of our budget. That's a huge flag. That means that we've been spending more than our spending trend is a little higher than we should be at this point. Now, the good news is we haven't really spent in other areas, like let's say subscriptions. We have $800 there that we haven't used yet. Now, this is where it takes a little bit of forethought as well. We also have some subscriptions that we don't get charged for until the end of the year, and they're annual subscriptions. So we have to be a little familiar with the items that could be coming down the road. And so just start looking at your budgets. If you're already like at 80, 90%, it's a huge flag. So all right, so in that situation, what do we do? Lindsay, can you go back to the slides?
Yep, let me just get organized here. Flipping between things is tricky. Yeah.
So there's a few different things that we could do at this point. One, on the fiscal services website, there are some forms where you could actually transfer money. So for example, if I wanted to transfer some money from the subscriptions or let's say from mileage over to my supplies, I could do that. And the way we do that is by going to forms on the fiscal services page. And if you look at the budget transfer request form, I would click on that, open that up, and I would use this form to get to make an adjustment to my budget. And so all we're asking for is to put down the code on, okay, the fund that you're referring to, your department code, and what account do you want to move it from, and what account do you want to move it to? So if I want to move $500 from, let's say, would be a good one, from contracts over to non-instructional supplies, I would put that information here. Then I would send that over to either my manager or to Lindsay, the VP, since we don't have a controller right now. I'll get her signature and then I would submit it to accounting. And right here, we already have Lisa Saunders' name in there. So that's who it would be submitted to. Yeah. And so this is what we're asking everyone to start looking at so that you do not go over budget.
And this is old stuff. I just want to let everybody know we've had these out here for a while. So we want to spread the word about folks really starting to use these and reviewing your budget in Simpler. I know Cesar is going to talk about it, but if you've never seen that Simpler page, this page I was on, reach out to Lisa Saunders in accounting and ask for access, ask for training. I'm jumping ahead. I'm stealing Cesar's thunder, but
it's totally okay. We're going back and forth. Now the other place, let's say you do not know, you don't like using Simpler. Is there another file that I could look at? Yes, it's the department file that your department submits. And so your budget manager has access to this file. So on here, this is where you see all of your coding information, all the different accounts you have. your history for the last 3 years, the budget that you had last year versus the budget that you have this year. And so on here, you pretty much have all your information. Let's say you have a budget of $10,000, let's say $50,000 for contracts. In this case, $78,000. Well, what are all those contracts? I don't remember what they are. Well, on the supporting document, which is the next tab, our supporting schedules, there is a breakdown that the budget manager should be using to actually break out all of the different contracts or any big line items. So like Concur, for example, we actually estimated $25,000. So we have a contract amount of $26,000. Let's see, Semper Systems, $18,000 a year. That's a $1,500 invoice per month. So we have a pretty good breakdown. Every budget file should have it, or excuse me, every department should have this type of non-labor budget file that they can refer to. It's submitted during the budget creation process. And so you have access to it all year if you're the budget manager. You could continue to go back to this budget so that, one, you can look at your codes in case you forget what the account code is or the program code or even your department code. But please utilize this budget file. It's there so that you can use it throughout the year.
Is this only for managers?
No, I was just going to say that. So for all of you who aren't the budget owner, you're not, you're not, in this case, it was James, but you work in accounting and you need to code an invoice or you're helping with budgets. There's no reason why you can't have access to this. It's not top secret at all. It's something everyone needs to have access to. So if you need access to your department's file, just shoot, Cesar or someone in accounting. They all know these forms and they can give you access to it, or your supervisor can give you access also, just by sharing the file.
Back in the day, and I mean really back in the day, I don't know if it was 15 years ago or whatever have you, they used to make these big voluminous huge manuals of budgets, and you used to flip through them and find your department, and it was transparent, it was open to everybody to view. Now that everything's on spreadsheets and in the computer, there's only it shrunk from having a public access to this huge manual to just the managers and the people who work on financing and invoicing and budgets. So I don't know how that plays a role now. If someone asks you about a budget, I mean, it's public information. Do you give that information out if someone asks you?
To the public, we refer them
No,
to
yeah. Well, let's just say like me. I'm working in a different department. I know all about accounting and budgets, but let's just say I know nothing and I come to you and say, oh, I want to see what this department budget is. Someone who doesn't even work in that department or whatever. I want to see how their funding is working or something. How do you guys approach that?
Good question. No one, I don't recall.
I don't know if anyone's ever done that.
Because you know what, literally these books, these big manuals they were available and in each office where you could just go in. I mean, they were just huge books. You just go in and open up to what department. You can even see people's names and salaries in there.
So when you go into Simpler,
Yeah.
everyone can see the same thing in Simpler. So I can see the same thing that you can see in Simpler. So everybody's budgets are in Simpler for anyone to see. These Google Sheets we have a lot more useful information telling us what we're paying for out of the codes.
Yeah.
If someone asks to see a different department, I wouldn't have any problem sharing it, assuming they're needing it for something useful.
Right.
I think that'd be fine. Yeah, there's no reason why this is top secret, like I said.
Yeah.
But really, I want to get the word out that those Google Sheets, we use them during the budget development time. And a lot of folks, number one, probably a lot of you have never even seen that, right? Which is why I wanted to show the actual sheet. But number two, people stop using it. We put all this work into creating it at budget time, and then no one touches it for the next 11 months. And they're really a useful tool to use throughout the year to help remind you where to code an invoice, look at where you're at with your budget. So I want to try and get those a little bit more on people's fingertips to remember to review those Google Sheets throughout the year. Let me move us along though, because silly me thinking we didn't have a lot of content. We're running out of, we only have 4 minutes left? How is that possible? Man. Okay, I'm gonna zip through because you guys probably want to end in 4 minutes.
I
Lottery
can skip this
fund.
one. I could,
Yeah.
yeah, 'cause
Well,
I-
I'm gonna skip it, Cesar. 'Cause
Okay,
I
yeah.
really want to get to one important thing that we're touching on right now.
Yeah.
So lottery fund, we still have it. We have guidelines on the lottery fund. If anyone's interested, that always exists, a write-up of how they can be used and how they're not supposed to be used, but here they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Budget development timeline, I'm gonna pass. This is in the board docs for next week if anyone's interested in looking at, no, I'm sorry, from last week on how the budget development timeline works. It's the same as always. Tentative budget in June, adopted budget in September, and all of our steps in between. Alan, you can't get into Simpler unless you are on the VPN or VDI. I don't know if that's your problem, but you do have to be logged in that way. So this is my big new kind of slide. I wanted to make sure we covered it, but I can do it quick.
Yeah.
For all of you who are budget managers and who are used to getting these files, reminder, you get 3 files. You get your non-labor budget file that we just looked at. You get your labor budget file which lists all of your employees, and you have to make sure that we have the right employees in your department. And you get your hourly budget file if that applies to your department. So your reminder from me to you all is that you need to be reaching out to your team as a part of your process of analyzing these budgets. They're not supposed to be something you do in a silo by yourself, on your own, just guessing what you need for the next year. You really need to ask your faculty members if you're a department chair, or ask your staff if you're a manager in a department that's got mostly staff. It's supposed to be a collaborative process. So much so that I'm even going to show you all, if I can get out of here again. When you look at these files like this one, there's a box down here, and we created this on purpose. We want to know what your budget development process was. We want to know that you talked to your team about it, and when you met with your team and what they, what input they gave you, for example. That's really important. That's something we're looking for when we get these files back. We want information filled in here that you did go through this with your team. So there's that piece. And then the flip side, I want to encourage all of you who don't have managers here and don't know about this, and maybe your manager or your department chair isn't bringing you these files, bug them, say, hey, I was just at a budget training for in-service, and I heard I'm supposed to be giving you input on these various files, your labor file and your non-labor file and your hourly budget file. So please do reach out to your department chair or your manager or whoever it is to ask that you, get to be included in the budget development process, because you absolutely should be. And the time frame is March. It's coming up. We'll be sending out these files. Actually, it's February, March. We'll be sending out the files in the next couple weeks, needing input and asking for them back before the end of March. And then from there, those files get reviewed by our Budget Resource Allocation Committee, our BRAC committee. I just talked really fast and I made us done with 1 minute to spare.
Now,
Did
for
you
everyone,
get all that?
Yeah, did you get it?
for everyone that signed up, I'll email you a list of resources, just so that you have something, a document that has references. But the resources are going to be web addresses, websites for the governor's budget, for the BRAC website, for our fiscal services website, where to get forms. That type of information I'll include in the resources. And and also look at our fiscal services website. We have a training calendar in case you're interested in learning a little bit more about how Simpler works. We've already scheduled 2 workshops per month for the rest of the year. So that there's already a calendar available on our fiscal services website for that.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate your time on a Friday afternoon. And we have a great fiscal services team. So if you ever feel lost or you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing with your budget, just reach out to our team. Cesar and accounting. Our accounts payable team has been phenomenal with all the remote processing of invoices. Really appreciate all their hard work, especially in this time where we've been short-staffed without a controller. So thank you. Sorry, we had to zip through that last part there. We always need more time on budget things. I joke that I can talk about it for hours and there's never enough time. So thank you all. You all are signing off. Great to see you. Have a wonderful
Thanks.
Thank
afternoon.
you, Lindsay.
See
Have a
you
good
later.
Thank
weekend.
you. It was great.
Have a good
Appreciate it.
weekend.
Bye.
We need more workflow.
Thank you.